Hi everybody, welcome back to Be Like Christ. If you're like me, you may have gone to a large university to get your education. And I was reading Matthew chapter 5 the other day, and I found that there was a big difference between the people who my university professors said would influence the world and the people who Jesus says will influence the world. I was a business major in school, and I went to one of the largest universities in the entire country. And I was taught by a lot of esteemed professors, millionaire philanthropists, VPs of large corporations, people who the world would think were really influential and really had an impact on the world. And they would always talk about what it took to be successful in the business world. They would always talk about what it took to change the world for the good. And a lot of young professionals really eat that information up because they see, here's a man who's had success, and if I want to have the impact that he's had, I need to be like him. One of the things that the school always promoted was that we were paying to get the best education that we could get. And their school was so highly esteemed that it was going to give us a foundation and give us everything we needed to go out into the world and to make something of ourselves. And the people were really going to be impressed with what we had done because we had graduated from a top-tier university. But Jesus comes with a very different message. Remember that Matthew chapter 5 comes right after Matthew chapter 4, which Jesus has just spent healing a bunch of sick people, paralytics, epileptics, demon-possessed people, probably a lot of poor people, a lot of people that the world just saw as insignificant. And Jesus' message is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Blessed are those who are impoverished in spirit, who don't lean on themselves because they know that they're not enough to get themselves through this life and to be what they should be. Another thing they always told us in business school is that when you go out for an interview, really talk yourself up. Tell these people how great you are, how much better you are at one particular skill or at the ability to do a certain job than everybody else. And they said, sell yourself. Because that's the way that you're going to get a good starting position, and that's going to be the launching point for the rest of your career to make sure everybody knows how talented you are. It's only when people know that you're talented that you're going to be able to get the good positions and achieve all the dreams that you've been dreaming about. But Jesus comes with a very different message. His message is, blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who may be powerful, who may be skilled, who may be the best, but they don't have to go around telling everybody. They're humble. And he says their reward is going to be that they're going to inherit the earth. I don't know what your dreams are, but I'm sure they're not as big as inheriting the earth. But Jesus says it's not going to be by going around and boasting about how great you are, how sufficient you are within yourself. It's going to be those who are meek, who find their strength in me and share that strength with the world, who will ultimately inherit everything. Another thing that they always told us was that you have to be hungry. You got to be thirsty for success. You've got to eat, sleep, drink your dreams if you're ever going to achieve any of those things. And there's been a ton of books written, and there are a lot of people who are thirsty and hungry for various different things. Maybe success, maybe power, maybe influence. Maybe it's just so their colleagues look at them and say, wow, you're the best. And so they end up spending their entire lives trying to satiate this hunger and this thirst for whatever it is that they're craving. And Jesus comes and he says, well, that's kind of all a waste of time. You're never going to find satisfaction in any of those things. But blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Another part of business that I hate, can't stand it, is that so much of business is built around networking. There's a lot of truth to this statement. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And once you get up into your upper years of college, university, whatever, and you start working your co-ops or your internships, people start talking about networking, and they start talking about getting in good with the top people. And then your friends start bragging to each other like, oh, I had dinner with the vice president of finance last night. Or I was at a restaurant and the board of directors was 2 seats down from me. Because they see those connections as way for them to lift themselves up and to climb that corporate ladder. There's so much value put on powerful people or influential people or people that we really think are special, great innovators, whatever. And people go to networking events and social gatherings all in a desire and a pursuit to meet new people. Gotta rub noses with the big shots. But I think Jesus is saying to us in Matthew 5, there's really only one person that you need to be concerned about meeting. He says in verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I don't care who you had dinner with last night or who invited you to the board meeting. There's no one you're going to see who's more impressive than God. And for that case, there's no one who's going to be able to help you along your way to real success than God himself. Titles are another thing that everyone's always so worried about in business. What's your title? Are you a manager? Are you a director? Are you a vice president? Are you a senior vice president? Are you a CFO or a COO or a CIO or a CEO? Or do you sit on the board, or are you the chair of the board? You can watch all these young business professionals just sitting around dreaming of the day when somebody will put a plaque over the side of their office door that says director, fill in the name. And when they get that director salary that comes along with it. And Jesus seems to say, man, those are all such a waste of time. Director? What's that? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Son of God. Put that on your door. One of the last big contrasts that I saw is actually in verse 9 and 10, or verse 10 and 11. In business, there's kind of a push towards separating your personal values with your company's values. There's an idea that you can hold whatever Christian values you have at home, but when you come to the workplace, you're a different person. Because we're about customer service, and that means that we have to just be accepting of pretty much everything and do whatever the customer asks us to do. We can't really be like taking a stand and bringing morality to work. And although I would never say that that's implicitly stated, it's definitely implied and it's encouraged as these young business professionals go out into the work environment. It's clear that your personal morals really aren't welcome here. Because what if somebody's offended by what you believe? We can't have that, because that might scare away customers, and that lowers our profit margins, and it's bad for business. You're not going to have a very blessed business if you start offending everybody with your fundamental Bible beliefs. But again, Jesus has a totally different message. And his message is, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. If you want to be blessed, then you have to take a stand for Jesus. And it's not shameful, and it's a good thing when people look at you and they falsely accuse you and they make fun of you, and maybe they don't come to your business because you take a stand for what Jesus asked you to take a stand for, and you claim his name. Business professionals, CEOs, politicians may look at Jesus' list of blessed people in Matthew chapter 5 and say, you're not going to get anywhere in the business world with an attitude like that. You're not going to make it in life. At the end of your days, you're probably just going to be a nobody who never ran a large corporation or made a lot of money or who gave back to their community. Sorry, but you just don't have what it takes to cut it. But Jesus says it's these types of people that are the salt of the earth in verse 13. And in verse 14, he says it's these types of people who are going to be a light to the world, a world full of darkness. So while you're studying at university, or maybe you've gone on to bigger and better things, keep this in mind. Who is it that's really going to influence the world? Is it the man that the world is going to create, who's all about himself, and he's all about telling people how great he is, and he's all about just making everybody happy and not taking a stand for anything? Or is it a man who's poor in spirit, a man who hungers and thirsts after righteousness, a man who's meek, a peacemaker, and takes a stand when he has to take a stand, even if that means persecution is coming his way? To me, the kingdom of heaven, comfort, inheriting the world, being satisfied, having mercy, being called a son of God, those all sound pretty good. So how do we influence the world for the better? Are we going to take the advice of men and become full of ourselves to lift ourselves up in pride? Or are we going to take the advice of Jesus to be the salt of the earth and a light to a world that needs it so badly?